There he is. There is Mr. Zuckerberg. Whoa, look at him. Zuckerberg. All eyes on Zuckerberg. Hey, I'll be honest, that looks like a very stressful situation. You know what? Gotta give him credit for showing up. But man, oh man, oh man. Has he, I mean, when you go around calling Diamond and Silk two black women, you go around calling them, quote, unsafe for Facebook, what do you expect's gonna happen, man? What the hell do you expect is gonna happen? Of course people are gonna have issues with you, bro. You can't go around censoring people you disagree with, man, while promoting your platform like it's a place for anyone, you know, who wants to be there, not just left-leaning outlets. There he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only Mark Zuckerberg, whose organization loves censoring anybody with a different opinion than his tyrannical will. And Diamond and Silk have come out and said that Facebook called Diamond and Silk two black women, quote, unsafe for Facebook.
We welcome everyone to today's hearing on Facebook's social media privacy.
Now, something to take into account is that we're talking about a multi-billionaire.
This is a unique hearing. The issues we will consider range from data privacy.
Why the hell is he looking around going, is he like nodding at every single person he has in his pocket up there at the table? He's like, you know, $10 million in your pocket, boy. Hey, $20 million in your pocket, boy.
Between our two committees, that may not seem like...
That's part of the problem here, is that he's a multi-billionaire, and he could buy off all these liberal politicians easy.
We will do our best to keep things moving efficiently, given our circumstances. We will begin with opening statements from the chairman and ranking members of each committee, starting with Chairman Thune.
Or, Mark, instead of having to go through all this shit, Mark, you can just come out and say it. Donald Trump won fair and square. Like, why is it so hard? Donald Trump won fair and square. You wouldn't have to be sitting here, Mark, if you just came out and said it. The Russia collusion, the hacking of the election was all fake news.
Chairman Thune and I will make sure to let...
But they just, anything to avoid saying that Donald Trump won fair and square.
Of course, there will be the usual follow-up written question.
Of course, now what they're saying is that Mark Zuckerberg's like, I had no idea that, you know, the power that the internet was going to have. And now because of the internet, Donald Trump got elected, and all these hateful people have a voice and they can organize collectively thanks to the internet. If only we had seen it coming. So now they're saying that the internet and the connectivity that it brings all of us is inherently bad and has to be regulated.
Today's hearing is extraordinary. It's extraordinary to hold a joint committee hearing. It's even more extraordinary to have a single CEO testify before nearly half of the United States Senate. But then Facebook is pretty extraordinary. More than 2 billion people use Facebook every month. 1.4 billion people use it every day. More than the population of any country on earth except China, and more than 4 times the population of the United States. It's also more than 1,500 times the population of my home state of South Dakota. Plus, roughly 45% of American adults report getting at least some of their news from Facebook. In many respects, Facebook's incredible reach is why we're here today. We're here because of what you, Mr. Zuckerberg, have described as a breach of trust. A quiz app used by approximately 300,000 people led to information about 87 million Facebook users being obtained by the company Cambridge Analytica. There are plenty of questions about the behavior of Cambridge Analytica, and we expect to hold a future hearing on Cambridge and similar firms. But as you've said, this is not likely to be an isolated incident, a fact demonstrated by Facebook's suspension of another firm just this past weekend. You've promised that when Facebook discovers other apps that had access to large amounts of user data, you will ban them and tell those affected. And that's appropriate. But it's unlikely to be enough for the 2 billion Facebook users. One reason that so many people are worried about this incident is what it says about how Facebook works. The idea that for every person who decided to try an app, information about nearly 300 other people was scraped from your service is, to put it mildly, disturbing. And the fact that those 87 million people may have technically consented to making their data available doesn't make most people feel any better. The recent revelation that malicious actors were able to utilize Facebook's default privacy settings to match email addresses and phone numbers found on the so-called dark web to public Facebook profiles, potentially affecting all Facebook users, only adds fuel to the fire. What binds these two incidents is that they don't appear to be caused by the kind of negligence that allows typical data breaches to happen. Instead, they both appear to be the result of people exploiting the very tool that the actions Facebook is taking to ensure that third parties don't obtain data from unsuspecting users, while necessary, will actually serve to enhance Facebook's own ability to market such data exclusively. Most of us understand that whether you're using Facebook or Google or some other online services, we are trading certain information about ourselves for free or low-cost services. But for this model to persist, both sides of the bargain need to know the stakes that are involved. Right now, I'm not convinced that Facebook's users have the information that they need to make meaningful choices. In the past, many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have been willing to defer to tech companies' efforts to regulate themselves. But this may be changing. Just last month, in overwhelming bipartisan fashion, Congress voted to make it easier for prosecutors and victims to go after websites that knowingly facilitate sex trafficking. This should be a wake-up call for the tech community. We want to hear more, without delay, about what Facebook and other companies plan to do to take greater responsibility for what happens on their platforms. How will you protect users' data? How will you inform users about the changes that you are making? And how do you intend to proactively stop harmful conduct instead of being forced to respond to it months or years later? Mr. Zuckerberg, in many ways, you and the company that you've created, the story that you've created, represent the American dream. Many are incredibly inspired by what you've done.
Shouldn't have censored conservative news, man. You should have censored conservative news during the 2016 election.
A privacy nightmare for the scores of people who use Facebook. This hearing is an opportunity to speak to those who believe in Facebook and to those who are deeply skeptical about it. We are listening, America is listening, and quite possibly the world is listening too.
Thank you. Now, Ranking Member Feinstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Grassley, Chairman Thune. Thank you both for holding this hearing. Mr. Zuckerberg, thank you for being here. You have a real opportunity this afternoon to lead the industry and demonstrate a meaningful commitment to protecting individual privacy. We have learned over the past few months, and we've learned a great deal that's alarming. We've seen how foreign actors are abusing social media platforms like Facebook to interfere in elections.
And of course, Feinstein, she wants to use the Russia hacked the election scapegoat as a way to get Mark Zuckerberg to basically crack down on free speech and only allow anti-gun, liberal, left-leaning talking points to spread. That's what they're looking for. Because the establishment realized they can't control the internet. It's too powerful to let people freely and openly exchange ideas. So now they're hoping they can get Facebook to crack down.
A coordinated campaign through 470 Facebook accounts and pages. The campaign included ads and false information to create discord and harm Secretary Clinton's campaign. And the content was seen by an estimated 157 million Americans. A month later, on March 17th, news broke that Cambridge Analytica
Hillary lost because Facebook.
of approximately 50 million Facebook
Fake news has real consequences, guys. Mark Zuckerberg is reaping what he's sown for censoring conservative news during the 2016 election while pushing liberal news. Fake news has real consequences.
Specifically, using a personality quiz he created, Professor Kogan collected the personal information of 300,000 Facebook users and then collected data on millions of their friends. It appears the information collected included everything these individuals had on their Facebook pages, and according to some reports, even included private direct messages between users. Professor Kogan is said to have taken data from over 70 million Americans. It has also been reported that he sold this data to Cambridge Analytica for $800,000. Cambridge Analytica then took this data and created a psychological welfare tool to influence
My lord, this is boring. I just want to hear Mark Zuckerberg speak.
declared that Cambridge Analytica ran all the digital campaigns.
He's going to say what he's always said. I'm so sorry. We believe in connecting people. We believe in, bringing the world closer together. All those talking points he always has. But if you believed in an open and it wasn't that printed on the inside of his sweater hood. Remember when he had to take it off during that awkward, sweaty interview? And he had like some Illuminati logo on the inside of his sweater hood. And it said, Facebook, making the world more open and connected. Okay, bro.
2015, but appears not to have taken significant steps.
There's nothing open and connected about shutting down conservative news because you don't like it.
We had yesterday. And I believe that Facebook, through your presence here today and the words you're about to tell us, will indicate how strongly your industry will regulate and or reform the...
Will crack down on any alternative opinions.
This is extraordinarily important. You lead a big company with 27,000 employees, and we very much look forward to your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. The history and growth of Facebook mirrors that of many of our technological giants. Founded by Mr. Zuckerberg in 2004, Facebook has exploded over the past 14 years. Facebook currently has over 2 billion monthly active users.
The Illuminati, man, they're like, what the fuck is this internet thing? It's too powerful. The Illuminati's freaking out.
Like their expanding user base, the data collected on Facebook users has also skyrocketed. They have moved on from schools, likes, and relationship statuses. Today, Facebook has access to dozens of data points, ranging from ads that you've clicked on, events you've attended, and your location based upon your mobile device. It is no secret that Facebook makes money off this data through advertising revenue, although many seem confused by or altogether unaware of this fact. Facebook generated $40 billion in revenue in 2017, with about 98% coming from advertising across Facebook and Instagram. Significant data collection is also occurring at Google,
He's like,
Twitter,
what?
Apple, and Amazon.
Oh shit.
And even an ever-expanding portfolio of
Fake news has real consequences.
grant endless opportunities to collect increasing amounts of
Mark Zuckerberg is a mascot for the liberal left. And now the liberal left is even turning on Mr. Progressive Champion Mark Zuckerberg. The left is eating itself right now because of their unwillingness to just say Donald Trump won fair and square. Just admit it. Just say it. Just concede the loss. But they absolutely refuse because they're afraid that Donald Trump might come in hard on these crazy leftist criminals. So they have to do whatever they can to say Donald Trump is fundamentally unqualified to be president. It's an invalid presidency. So any justice he does, going after the pedophiles, going after the corruption, anything Trump does that's good for the American taxpayer, they at least have the Russian collusion scapegoat to justify trying to tear down Trump. That's why they refuse. They're going through all this shit. They're even tearing down Mark Zuckerberg, progressive leftist champion. They're even tearing him down because they're so desperate. They're crazy. They're literally, as the fucking house is burning down on top of them, they're going to take everybody in with them. They're that desperate. Eventually, people like Mark Zuckerberg are going to have to say, listen, Illuminati leftist establishment, fuck off. Stop it. You lost. Give up. Give up. Because if not, they're all going to come crashing down. As the Russian collusion, Trump collusion narrative began to fall apart, they started to shift their sights onto Facebook and Cambridge Analytica, anything to keep power. So they stopped trying to tear down Trump, and now they're trying to control puppets. They're trying to get Facebook to basically censor anything that they don't disagree with. I mean, the Illuminati are angry, man. They're serious.
Social media tactics can be debated, but their use over the past years across the political spectrum and their increased significance cannot be ignored. Our policy towards data privacy and security must keep pace with these changes. Data privacy should be...
I gotta say, this is a real bore. I'm waiting for Mark Zuckerberg to start talking. Let me pull out the chat real quick. Sorry about a bit of lag here, guys. Just got a little bit of lag. Should go away in a moment. Sorry about that.
If you and other social media companies do not get your act in order, none of us are going to have any privacy anymore. That's what we're facing. We're talking about personally identifiable information that, if not kept by the social media companies from theft, a value that we have in America being our personal privacy, we won't have it anymore. It's the advent of technology, and of course all of us are part of it. From the moment that we wake up in the morning until we go to bed, we're on those handheld tablets. And online companies like Facebook are tracking our activities and collecting information. Facebook has a responsibility to protect this personal information. We had a good discussion yesterday. We went over all of this. You told me that the company had failed to do so. It's not the first time that Facebook has mishandled its users' information. The FTC found that Facebook's privacy policies had deceived users in the past. And in the present case, we recognize that Cambridge Analytica and an app developer lied to consumers and lied to you, lied to Facebook. But did Facebook watch over the operations? We want to know that. And why didn't Facebook notify 87 million users that their personally identifiable information had been taken? And it was being also used. Why were they not informed? For unauthorized political purposes. So only now, and I appreciate our conversation, only now Facebook has pledged to inform those consumers whose accounts were compromised. I think you're genuine. I got that sense in conversing with you. You want to do the right thing. You want to enact reforms. We want to know if it's going to be enough. And I hope that will be in the answers today. Now, since we still don't know what Cambridge Analytica has done with this data, you heard Chairman Thune say, as we have discussed, we want to haul Cambridge Analytica in to answer these questions at a separate hearing. I want to thank Chairman Thune for working with all of us on scheduling.
Cambridge Analytica is standard operating procedure in that industry.
We can get to the bottom of this. And if Facebook and other online companies will not or cannot fix the privacy invasions, then we are going to have to. We, the Congress. How can American consumers trust folks like your company to be caretakers of their most personal and identifiable information? And that's the question. Thank you.
Thank you, my colleagues and Senator Nelson. Our witness today is Mark Zuckerberg, founder, chairman, chief executive officer of Facebook. Mr. Zuckerberg launched Facebook February 4th, 2004, at the age of 19. And at that time, he was a student at Harvard University. As I mentioned previously, his company now has over $40 billion of annual revenue and over 2 billion monthly active users. Mr. Zuckerberg, along with his wife, also established the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative to further philanthropic causes. I now turn to you. Welcome to the committee. And whatever your statement is orally, if you have a longer one, it'll be included in the record. So proceed, sir.
Chairman Grassley, Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Feinstein, and Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the committee. We face a number of important issues around privacy, safety, and democracy, and you will rightfully have some hard questions for me to answer. Before I talk about the steps we're taking to address them, I want to talk about how we got here.
Uh-oh, here we go.
Facebook is an idealistic and optimistic company. For most of our existence, we focused on all of the good that connecting people can do. And as Facebook has grown, people everywhere have gotten a powerful new tool for staying connected to the people they love,
Yeah.
for making their voices heard, and for building communities and businesses. Just recently, we've seen the Me Too movement and the March for Our Lives organized, at least in part, on Facebook. After Hurricane Harvey, people came together to raise more than $20 million for relief. And more than 70 million small businesses.
See, that's the new talking point right there. Oh yeah, we love facilitating. You know, the whole slogan for Facebook is a more open and connected world. That's what it's all about, right? And he talks about how the March for Our Lives and the Me Too movement, left-leaning movements, they have their connectedness. But now what he's going to say is, but we didn't know that Facebook and the internet 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't know the internet was going to allow hate groups to organize, hate groups to mobilize and get racists like Trump elected. So Me Too, okay. March for Our Guns, okay. Everything else, evil, racist, bigoted, whatever.
use Facebook to create jobs and grow. But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, for foreign interference in elections, and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake.
Hey, March for Our Lives is a hate group. Me Too movement is a fucking hate group. How about that?
It's my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here.
Oh, wow, Mark.
So now...
Thank you. He's getting his quivery little lip. Thank you, Mark. How dare you? How dare you let the internet allow people, not just the establishment elites with $50 billion in their bank accounts, but how dare the internet connect all types of people from all income brackets, even those nasty peasants you hate that spew so much hate on the internet. How terrible. How terrible. So terrible.
We have to go through all of our relationship with people and make sure that we're taking a broad enough view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just connect people. We have to make sure that those connections are positive. It's not enough to just give people a voice. We need to make sure that people aren't using it to harm other people or to spread misinformation.
Incredible.
It's not enough to just give people control over their information. We need to make sure that the developers they share it with protect their information too.
Incredible.
Across the board, we have a responsibility to not just build tools, but to make sure that they're used for good. It will take some time to work through all the changes we need to make across the company, but I'm committed to getting this right. This includes the basic responsibility of protecting people's information, which we failed to do with Cambridge Analytica. So here are a few things that we are doing to address this and to prevent it from happening again.
Here we go.
First, we're getting to the bottom of exactly what Cambridge Analytica did and telling everyone affected. What we know now is that Cambridge Analytica improperly accessed some information about millions of Facebook members by buying it from an app developer. That information, this was information that people generally share publicly on their Facebook pages, like names and their profile picture and the pages they follow. When we first contacted Cambridge Analytica, they told us that they had deleted the data. About a month ago, we heard new reports that suggested that wasn't true. And now we're working with governments in the US, the UK, and around the world to do a full audit of what they've done and to make sure they get rid of any data they may still have. Second, to make sure no other app developers out there are misusing data, we're now investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of information in the past. And if we find that someone improperly used data, we're going to ban them from Facebook and tell everyone affected. Third, to prevent this from ever happening again going forward, we're making sure that developers can access as much information now. The good news here is that we already made big changes to our platform in 2014 that would have prevented this specific situation with Cambridge Analytica from occurring again today. But there's more to do, and you can find more details on the steps we're taking in my written statement. My top priority has always been our social mission of connecting people, building community, and bringing the world closer together. Advertisers and developers will never take priority over that as long as I'm running Facebook.
Okay, bro.
I started Facebook when I was in college. We've come a long way since then. We now serve more than 2 billion people around the world, and every day, people use our services to stay connected with the people that matter to them most. I believe deeply in what we're doing, and
Unless you're conservative. Then you get shut down and censored. Thanks, Mark. Such a good, humble, kind guy, right? He just cares about making the world more open and connected. Unless you have a different opinion, then he crushes your soul.
I know that when we address these challenges,
It's a good
we'll
man.
look back and view helping people connect and giving more people a voice as a positive force in the world.
Good guy.
I realize the issues we're talking about today aren't just issues for Facebook and our community. They're issues and challenges for all of us as Americans. Thank you for having me here today, and I'm ready to take your questions.
All I'll remind members that maybe weren't here when I had my opening comments that we are operating under the 5-minute rule, and that applies to the 5-minute rule, and that applies to those of us who are chairing the committee as well. I start with you. Facebook handles extensive amounts of personal data for billions of users. A significant amount of that data is shared with third-party developers who utilize your platform. As of early this year, you did not actively monitor whether that data was transferred by such developers to other parties. Moreover, your policies only prohibit transfers by developers to parties seeking to profit from such data. Number one, besides Professor Kogan's transfer and now potentially CubeU, do you know of any instances where user data was improperly transferred to third party in breach of Facebook's terms? If so, how many times has that happened? And was Facebook only made aware of that transfer by some third party?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As I mentioned, we're now conducting a full investigation into every single app that had access to a large amount of information before we locked down platform to prevent developers from accessing this information in around 2014. We believe that we're going to be investigating many apps, tens of thousands of apps, and if we find any suspicious activity, we're going to conduct a full audit of those apps to understand how they're using their data and if they're doing anything improper. And if we find that they're doing anything improper, we'll ban them from Facebook, and we will tell everyone affected. As for past activity, I don't have all the examples of apps that we've banned here, but if you'd like, I can have my team follow up with you after this.
Okay. Have you ever required an audit to ensure the deletion of improperly transferred data, and if so, how many times?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have. I don't have the exact figure on how many times we have, but overall, the way we've enforced our platform policies in the past is we have looked at patterns of how apps have used our APIs and accessed information, as well as looked into reports that people have made to us about apps that might be doing sketchy things. Going forward, we're going to take a more proactive position on this and do much more regular spot checks and other reviews of apps, as well as increasing the amount of audits that we do. And again, I can make sure that our team follows up with you on anything about the specific past stats that would be interesting.
I was going to assume that sitting here today, you have no idea. And if I'm wrong on that, you're telling me, I think, that you're able to supply those figures to us, at least as of this point.
Mr. Chairman, I will have my team follow up with you on what information we have.
Okay, but right now you have no certainty of whether or not, how much of that's going on, right? Okay. Facebook collects massive amounts of data from consumers, including content, networks, contact lists, device information, location, and information from third parties. Yet your data policy is only a few pages long and provides consumers with only a few examples of what is collected and how it might be used. The examples given emphasize benign uses such as connecting with friends.
Bunch of softball questions here. We all know Mark Zuckerberg probably has half these people in his back pocket. I heard Ted Cruz is on the panel. Hopefully Ted Cruz grills this censorious CEO who censors anyone he doesn't disagree with, or rather anyone he disagrees with.
I believe it's important to tell people exactly how the information that they share on Facebook is going to be used. That's why every single time you go to share something on Facebook, whether it's a photo in Facebook or a message in Messenger or WhatsApp, every single time there's a control right there about who you're going to be sharing it with, whether it's your friends or public or a specific group, and you can change that and control that in line. To your broader point about the privacy policy, this gets into an issue that I think we and others in the tech industry have found challenging, which is that long privacy policies are very confusing. And if you make it long and spell out all the detail, then you're probably going to reduce the percent of people who read it and make it accessible to them. So one of the things that we've struggled with over time is to make something that is as simple as possible so people can understand it, as well as giving them controls in line in the product in the context of when they're trying to actually use them, taking into account that we don't expect that most people will want to go through and read a full legal document.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday when we talked, I gave the relatively harmless example that I'm communicating with my friends on Facebook and indicate that I love a certain kind of chocolate. And all of a sudden I start receiving advertisements for chocolate. What if I don't want to receive those commercial advertisements? So your Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Sandberg, suggested on the NBC Today show that Facebook users who do not want their personal information used for advertising might have to pay for that protection, pay for it. Are you actually considering having Facebook users pay for you not to use that information?
Senator, people have a control over how their information is used in ads in the product today. So if you want to have an experience where your ads aren't targeted using all the information that we have available, you can turn off third-party information. What we've found is that even though some people don't like ads, people really don't like ads that aren't relevant. And while there is some discomfort, for sure, with using information in making ads more relevant, the overwhelming feedback that we get from our community is that people would rather have us show relevant content there than not. So we offer this control that you're referencing. Some people use it. It's not the majority of people on Facebook. And I think that's a good level of control to offer. I think what Cheryl was saying was that in order to not run ads at all, we would still need some sort of business model.
And that is your business model. So I take it that, and I use the harmless example of chocolate, but if it got into more personal thing, communicating with friends, and I want to cut it off, I'm going to have to pay you in order not to send me, using my personal information, something that I don't want. That, in essence, is what I understood Ms. Sandberg to say. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. Although, to be clear, we don't offer an option today for people to pay to not show ads. We think offering an ad-supported service is the most aligned with our mission of trying to help connect everyone in the world. Because we want to offer a free service that everyone can afford.
Okay.
That's the only way that we can reach billions.
Yeah, you want to connect everyone in the world by censoring everyone who disagrees with you.
Identifiable data,
Okay, bro.
the company's data, not my data.
Sure, bro.
Is that it?
No, Senator. Actually, at the first line of our terms of service say that you control and own the information and content that you put on Facebook.
Well, the recent scandal is obviously frustrating, not only because it affected 87 million, but because it seems to be part of a pattern of lax data practices by the company going back years. So back in 2011, it was a settlement with the FTC, and now...
Jesus Christ, you can just say it. Trump won fair and square. He didn't collude with the Russians. Hillary lost because she's an old damn corpse. And none of this would have to be happening. Mark, just come out and say it. Hillary Clinton did not know how to run a digital online presidential campaign.
Learned in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica had bought data from an app developer on Facebook that people had shared it with. We did take action. We took down the app, and we demanded that both the app developer and Cambridge Analytica delete and stop using any data that they had. They told us that they did this. In retrospect, it was clearly a mistake to believe them. and we
Yes.
should have followed up and done a full audit then, and that is not a mistake that we will make.
Yes, you did that, and you apologized for it, but you didn't notify them. And do you think that you have an ethical obligation to notify 87 million Facebook users?
Senator, when we heard back from Cambridge Analytica that they had told us that they weren't using the data and had deleted it, we considered it a closed case. In retrospect, that was clearly a mistake. We shouldn't have taken their word for it, and we've updated our policies and how we're going to operate the company to make sure that we don't make that mistake again.
Did anybody notify the FTC?
No, Senator, for the same reason, that we'd considered it a closed case.
Senator Thune.
And Mr. Zuckerberg, would you do that differently today, presumably, in response to Senator Nelson's question,
Yes.
having to do it over? This may be your first appearance before Congress, but it's not the first time that Facebook has faced tough questions about its privacy policies. Wired Magazine recently noted that you have a 14-year history of apologizing for ill-advised decisions regarding user privacy, not unlike the one that you made just now in your opening statement.
Yep.
After more than a decade of promises to do better, how is today's apology different? And why should we trust Facebook to make the necessary changes to ensure user privacy and give people a clearer picture of your privacy policies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have made a lot of mistakes in running the company. I think it's pretty much impossible, I believe, to start a company in your dorm room and then grow it to be at the scale that we're at now without making some mistakes. And because our service is about helping people connect and information, those mistakes have been different in how we try not to make the same mistake multiple times, but in general, a lot of the mistakes are around how people connect to each other just because of the nature of the service. Overall, I would say that we're going through a broader philosophical shift in how we approach our responsibility as a company. For the first 10 or 12 years of the company, I viewed our responsibility as primarily building tools that if we could put those tools in people's hands, then that would empower people to do good things.
Listen close.
What I think we've learned now across a number of issues, not just data privacy, but also fake news and foreign interference in elections, is that we need to take a more proactive role and a broader view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just build tools. We need to make sure that they're used for good. And that means that we need to now take a more active view in policing the ecosystem and in watching and kind of looking out and making sure that all of the members in our community are using these tools in a way that's going to be good and healthy. So at the end of the day, this is going to be something where people will measure us by our results.
And Mark Zuckerberg has said it repeatedly now in the last few days. He's been putting posts to his Facebook account. He's talking about how we as Facebook, when we first started, we were so focused on just building the platform that we never imagined or thought about how it could be used for harm. And of course, part of it is, it's being used for hacking elections, which is fake news. Fake news has real consequences, as Mark Zuckerberg is learning right here. But the other thing that Mark is talking about is how Facebook as a platform and a tool has just been put out there, and it's so powerful, it's so liberating that it's allowing everyone to have a voice. And that's dangerous, because then the racists get a voice. But he's not worried about the Islamicists who believe in female genitalia. He's not worried about them getting a voice too. He's only worried about the white racists, because in case you guys didn't know, white liberal supremacists like Mark Zuckerberg and all his pals, all these so-called progressive liberals, they don't fight for minorities and say, racism is bad because they care about minorities. It's not because they care about minorities. Mark Zuckerberg is worried about other white people taking power away from him and all his other white liberal supremacist buddies. So that's why they shame conservatism, because it is actually a movement that unites people who don't have $50 billion in their bank account. Okay, it's about suppressing the underclasses from rising up and posing a threat. That's why they want to shut it down. So Mark Zuckerberg has been saying it lately. It's not enough to make the world more open and connected. the way he loves to talk about. Now he has to, quote, police the ecosystem. He just said the word right now. Police the ecosystem. It's time. It's not enough to make the world open and connected so everybody could have a voice that spreads across the globe. That's not enough. Now you have to crack down and regulate and censor and police. How dare you give everyone a voice? You can't do that. The Illuminati's panicking. They're like, Mark, what have you done? You can't just let anybody have a voice. Now that racist bigot Donald Trump got elected. And by the way, all this shit about Russia hacking the election and Facebook is so evil and they helped this and the Cambridge Analytica, all this crap is just it's smoke and mirrors. It's a big scheme to prevent Trump 2020. Is to prevent finally someone with balls from getting elected in 2020. And they're doing their damnedest. They can't win on merit. They can't win on skill. Shit, Hillary Clinton should have had a better online Facebook campaign, but she didn't. They can't win on merit. So they're going to try to use allegations that Mark Zuckerberg is complicit and, the Russians hacked the election. They're going to use all this crazy shit to force a presidential candidate into power in 2020. And preventing a Donald Trump re-election. Because these people are crazy. They're insane. Trump won. Just say it. And Mark Zuckerberg wouldn't even have to be standing here. So this is the new era. Mike Adams called it an online ethnic cleansing. That is what we're seeing here. This is a new age of censorship. They thought, well, who cares if a bunch of random people on internet forums connected and had a collective voice and spread the truth? Don't worry about those people. Well, guess what? An unprecedented shift happened when Donald Trump got elected, and you motherfuckers were scurrying around like roaches in the light, panicking because your little control scheme of propaganda through the mainstream media and the television, which was a very powerful tool for controlling the masses and getting your puppet presidents elected. It was a very powerful tool for decades. And then the internet came along and Facebook came along and eviscerated that. And you guys don't know how to deal with it. You guys don't know how to deal with the fact that, the government is going to have to be representative of its taxpayers. How terrible. How terrible that the government actually represents the interests of the people who pay its taxes. How terrible. So now we're actually going to have a representative government instead of one that sells us out to, globalist interests, and they're panicking. So, oh man, get ready for this new age of internet censorship. Calling Diamond and Silk, two black women who support Trump, they got their page shut down by Facebook. They reached out to Facebook asking, why'd you do this to us? These are two black women here. Facebook finally responds like 6 months later, sorry, the reason we censored you two black women is because you're, quote, unsafe to the community. So Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook thinks black women are unsafe. That's a quote from Mark Zuckerberg's own company executives or whatever employees sent out that response, according to Diamond and Silk. Okay.
It's not that I expect that anything I say here today to necessarily change people's view, but I'm committed to getting this right, and I believe that over the coming years, once we fully work all these solutions through, people will see real differences.
Good. Well, and I'm glad that you all have gotten that message.
Thanks.
As we discussed in my office yesterday, the line between legitimate political
Mark, you're going to have to change your slogan. No longer should it be Facebook, making the world more open and connected. You're going to have to throw that one out in the trash, man. You got a new slogan for the 21st century. Making the world more open and censored. You allow people to connect, but then you smash them down with the censorship hammer. That's the new Facebook slogan. Making the world more open and censored.
discourse and hate speech can sometimes be hard to identify, and especially when you're relying on artificial intelligence and other technologies for the initial discovery. Can you discuss what steps that Facebook currently takes when making these evaluations, the challenges that you face, and any examples of where you may draw the line between what is and what is not hate speech?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll speak to hate speech, and then I'll talk about enforcing our content policies more broadly. So, actually, maybe if you're okay with it, I'll go in the other order.
Talk about hate speech, bro. Talk about hate speech. Dictate what we are and are not allowed to say. Please, Mark, please.
So, from the beginning of the company in 2004, I started it in my dorm room. It was me and my roommate.
Oh.
We didn't have AI technology that could look at the content that people were sharing, so we basically had to enforce our content policies reactively. People could share what they wanted, and then if someone in the community found it to be offensive or against our policies, they'd flag it for us, and we'd look at it reactively. Now, increasingly, we are developing AI tools that can identify certain classes of bad activity proactively and flag it for our team at Facebook.
Oh, this is like pre-crime. This is like pre-crime now. It's like Minority Report. We've entered the area of pre-crime where AI tools will find out whether or not you're posting hate speech before you even press the fucking post button.
By the end of this year, by the way, we're going to have more than 20,000 people working on security and content review, working across all these things. So when content gets flagged to us, we have those people look at it, and if it violates our policies, then we take it down. Some problems lend themselves more easily to AI solutions than others. So hate speech is one of the hardest because determining if something is hate speech is very linguistically nuanced, right? You need to understand what is a slur and whether something is hateful, not just in English, but the majority of people on Facebook use it in languages that are different across the world. Contrast that, for example, with an area like finding terrorist propaganda, which we've actually been very successful at deploying AI tools on already. Today, as we sit here, 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda content that we take down on Facebook, our AI systems flag before any human sees it. So that's a success in terms of rolling out AI tools that can proactively police and enforce safety across the community. Hate speech, I am optimistic that over a 5 to 10 year period, we will have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. But today we're just not there on that. So a lot of this is still reactive. People flag it to us. We have people look at it. We have policies to try to make it as not subjective as possible. But until we get it more automated, there's a higher error rate than I'm happy with.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Feinstein.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, what is Facebook doing to prevent foreign actors from interfering in U.S. elections?
Thank you, Senator. This is one of my top priorities in 2018, is to get this right. One of my greatest regrets in running the company is that we were slow in identifying the Russian information operations in 2016. We expected them to do a number of more traditional cyber attacks, which we did identify and notify the campaigns that they were trying to hack into them, but we were slow at identifying the type of new information operations.
When did you identify new operations?
It was right around the time of the 2016 election itself. So since then, 2018 is an incredibly important year for elections, not just with the US midterms, but around the world. There are important elections in India, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Pakistan, and in Hungary that we want to make sure that we do everything we can to protect the integrity of those elections. Now, I have more confidence that we're going to get this right because since the 2016 election, there have been several important elections around the world where we've had a better record. There was the French presidential election, there was the German election, there was the US Senate Alabama special election last year.
Explain what is better about the record.
So we've deployed new AI tools that do a better job of identifying fake accounts that may be trying to interfere in elections or spread misinformation. And between those 3 elections, we were able to proactively remove tens of thousands of accounts that before they could contribute significant harm. And the nature of these attacks, though, is that there are people in Russia whose job it is to try to exploit our systems and other internet systems and other systems as well. So this is an arms race. Right? I mean, they're going to keep on getting better at this, and we need to invest in keeping on getting better at this too, which is why one of the things I mentioned before is we're going to have more than 20,000 people by the end of this year working on security and content review across the company.
Speak for a moment about automated bots that spread disinformation. What are you doing to punish those who exploit your platform in that regard?
Well, you're not allowed to have a fake account on Facebook. Your content has to be authentic. So we build technical tools to try to identify when people are creating fake accounts, especially large networks of fake accounts like the Russians have, in order to remove all of that content. After the 2016 election, our top priority was protecting the integrity of other elections around the world. But at the same time, we had a parallel effort to trace back to Russia the IRA activity, the Internet Research Agency activity. That was the part of the Russian government that did this activity in 2016.
But that's fake. That's fake news, Mark. Why is Mark spreading fake news in front of a congressional hearing? I mean, you're testifying. Don't spread fake news. What the hell?
We were able to determine
That is weird.
That a number of Russian media organizations that were sanctioned by the Russian regulator were operated and controlled by this Internet Research Agency. So we took the step last week. There was a pretty big step for us of taking down sanctioned news organizations in Russia as part of an operation to remove 270 fake accounts and pages, part of their broader network in Russia. That was actually not targeting international interference as much as, sorry, let me correct that. It was primarily targeting spreading misinformation in Russia itself, as well as certain Russian-speaking neighboring countries.
How many accounts of this type have you taken down?
Across, in the IRA specifically, the ones that we've pegged back to the IRA, we can identify the 470 in the American elections and the 270 that we specifically went after in Russia last week. There are many others that our systems catch, which are more difficult to attribute specifically to Russian intelligence. But the number would be in the tens of thousands of fake accounts that we remove, and I'm happy to have my team follow up with you on more information if that would be helpful.
Would you please? I think this is very important. If you knew in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica was using the information of Professor Kogan's, why didn't Facebook ban Cambridge in 2015? Why'd you wait another
Senator,
year?
that's a great question. Cambridge Analytica wasn't using our services in 2015 as far as we can tell. So this is clearly one of the questions that I asked our team as soon as I learned about this is why did we wait until we found out about the reports last month to ban them? It's because as of the time that we learned about their activity in 2015, they weren't an advertiser, they weren't running pages, so we actually had nothing to ban.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Feinstein. Now Senator Hatch.
Well, in my opinion, this is the most intense public scrutiny I've seen for a tech-related hearing since the Microsoft hearing that I chaired back in the late 1990s. The recent stories about Cambridge Analytica and data mining on social media have raised serious concerns about consumer privacy. And naturally, I know you understand that. At the same time, these stories touch on the very foundation of the internet economy and the way the websites that drive our internet economy make money. Some have professed themselves shocked that companies like Facebook and Google share user data with advertisers. Did any of these individuals ever stop to ask themselves why Facebook and Google don't charge for access? Nothing in life is free. Everything involves trade-offs. If you want something without having to pay money for it, you're going to have to pay for it in some other way, it seems to me. And that's what we're seeing here. And these great websites that don't charge for access, they extract value in some other way. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as they're upfront about what they're doing. To my mind, the issue here is transparency. It's consumer choice. Do users understand what they're agreeing to when they access a website or agree to terms of service? Are websites upfront about how they extract value from users, or do they hide the ball? Do consumers have the information they need to make an informed choice regarding whether or not to visit a particular website? To my mind, these are questions that we should ask or be focused.
It's like people say, if you sign up for a service and it's free, there's a chance you are the product. You're not the customer, you are the product. And maybe that's what Facebook is. You, the user, are the product. And what does Facebook sell? Facebook doesn't sell you, the customer, an open and connected world. Facebook sells companies and advertisers data about you in order to sell products.
Focusing on. Now, Mr. Zuckerberg, I remember well your first visit to Capitol Hill back in 2010. You spoke to the Senate Republican High-Tech Task Force, which I chair. You said back then that Facebook would always be free. Is that still your objective?
Senator, yes, there will always be a version of Facebook that is free. It is our mission to try to help connect everyone around the world and to bring the world closer together. In order to do that, we believe that we need to offer a service that everyone can afford, and we're committed to doing that.
Well, if so, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
I see. That's great. Whenever a controversy like this arises, there's always the danger that Congress's response
We run
will
ads.
be to step in and overregulate. Now, that's been the experience that I've had in my 42 years here. In your view, what sorts of legislative changes would help to solve the problems the Cambridge Analytica story has revealed, and what sorts of legislative changes would not help to solve this issue?
Senator, I think that there are a few categories of legislation that make sense to consider. Around privacy specifically, there are a few principles that I think it would be useful to discuss and potentially codify into law. One is around having a simple and practical set but that can also capture all the nuances of how these services work in a way that's not overly restrictive on providing the services. So that's one. The second is around giving people complete control. This is the most important principle for Facebook. Every piece of content that you share on Facebook, you own, and you have complete control over who sees it and how you share it, and you can remove it at any time. That's why every day, about 100 billion times a day, people come to one of our services and either post a photo or send a message to someone because they know that they have that control and that who they say it's going to go to is going to be who sees the content. And I think that control is something that's important that I think should apply to...
Go ahead, man. Kill Facebook. Kill the internet. Destroy. You want to know what made Facebook great? You want to know what made the internet great? Human beings, not just the establishment media, human beings able to create their own media, share their own ideas, and be interconnected all across the globe. Unfiltered, politically incorrect, authentic. So you want to go ahead and start policing the internet? You want to go ahead and start cracking down on what people can and can't say using Orwellian pre-crime Minority Report AI tools that freaking identify hate speech before you even press the fucking publish button? Go ahead, bro. Kill the very thing that made the internet great. And what was that? Humanity. Raw, unfiltered humanity. Go ahead, kill humanity. Kill it. And people are going to stop scrolling Facebook mindlessly all day, okay? You're going to kill the very thing that you love, but anything to maintain that politically correct pyramid paradigm.
To every service. And
Go ahead.
the third point is just around enabling innovation. Because some of these use cases that are very sensitive, like face recognition, for example. And I think that there's a balance that's extremely important to strike here, where you obtain special consent for sensitive features like face recognition, but we still need to make it so that American companies can innovate in those areas, or else we're going to fall behind Chinese competitors and others around the world who have different regimes for different new features like that.
Senator Cantwell.
Wow, did Mark Zuckerberg just say he's in competition with the Chinese? Whoa, why did Mark Zuckerberg just announce he's in a race war with another race? He's in a race war with the Chinese. That sounds a little xenophobic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Zuckerberg. Do you know who Palantir is?
I do.
Some people have referred to them as Stanford Analytica. Do you agree?
Senator, I have not heard that.
Okay. Do you think Palantir taught Cambridge Analytica, as press reports are saying, how to do these tactics?
Senator, I don't know.
Do you think that Palantir has ever scraped data from Facebook?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
Okay. Do you think that during the 2016 campaign, as Cambridge Analytica was providing support to the Trump campaign under Project Alamo, were there any Facebook people involved in that sharing of technique and information?
Senator, we provided support to the Trump campaign similar to what we provide to any advertiser or campaign who asks for it.
So that was a yes. Is that a yes?
Senator, can you repeat the specific question? I just want to make sure I get specifically what you're asking.
During the 2016 campaign, Cambridge Analytica worked with the Trump campaign to refine tactics, and were Facebook employees involved in that?
Senator, I don't know that our employees were involved with Cambridge Analytica, although I know that we did help out the Trump campaign overall in sales support in the same way that we do with other campaigns.
So they may have been involved in all working together during that time period. Maybe that's something your investigation will find out.
Senator, I can certainly have my team get back to you on any specifics there that I don't know sitting here today.
Have you heard of total information awareness? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I do not.
Okay. Total information awareness was 2003. John Ashcroft and others trying to do similar things to what I think is behind all of this. Geopolitical forces trying to get data and information to influence a process. So when I look at Palantir and what they're doing, and I look at WhatsApp, which is another acquisition, and I look at where you are from the 2011 consent decree and where you are today, I'm thinking, is this guy outfoxing the foxes, or is he going along with what is a major trend in an information age to try to harvest information for political forces? And so my question to you is, do you see that those applications, that those companies, Palantir and even WhatsApp, are going to fall into the same situation that you've just fallen into over the last several years?
Senator, I'm not sure specifically. Overall, I do think that these issues around information access are challenging. To the specifics about those apps, I'm not really that familiar with what Palantir does. WhatsApp collects very little information, and I think is less likely to have the kind of issues because of the way that the service is architected. But certainly I think that these are broad issues across the tech industry.
Well, I guess given the track record of where Facebook is and why you're here today, I guess people would say that they didn't act boldly enough. And the fact that people like John Bolton basically was an investor in New York Times article earlier, I guess it was actually last month, that the Bolton Pack was obsessed with how America was becoming limp-wristed and spineless and had wanted research and messaging for national security issues. So the fact that, you know, there are a lot of people who are interested in this larger effort. And what I think my constituents want to know is, was this discussed at your board meetings? And what are the applications and interests that are being discussed without putting real teeth into this? We don't want to come back to this situation again. I believe you have all the talent. My question is whether you have all the will to help us solve this problem.
Yes, Senator. So data privacy and foreign interference in elections are certainly topics that we have discussed at the board meeting. These are some of the biggest issues that the company has faced, and we feel a huge responsibility to get these right.
Do you believe the European regulation should be applied here in the U.S.?
Senator, I think everyone in the world deserves good privacy protection. And regardless of whether we implement the exact same regulation, I would guess that it would be somewhat different because we have somewhat different sensibilities in the U.S. as to other countries. We're committed to rolling out the controls and the affirmative consent and the special controls around sensitive types of technology like face recognition that are required in GDPR. We're doing that around the world. So I think it's certainly worth discussing whether we should have something similar in the U.S. But what I would like to say today is that we're going to go forward and implement that regardless of what the regulatory outcome is.
Senator Wicker. Senator Thune will chair next. Senator Wicker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Zuckerberg, thank you for being with us. My question is going to be sort of a follow-up on what Senator Hatch was talking about. And let me agree with basically his advice that we don't want to over-regulate to the point where we're stifling innovation and investment. I understand with regard to suggested rules or suggested legislation, there are at least two schools of thought out there. One would be the ISPs, the Internet Service Providers, who are advocating for privacy protections for consumers that apply to all online entities equally across the entire Internet ecosystem. Now, Facebook is an edge provider on the other hand. It's my understanding that many edge providers, such as Facebook, may not support that effort because edge providers have different business models than the ISPs and should not be considered like services. So do you think we need consistent privacy protections for consumers across the entire Internet ecosystem that are based on the type of consumer information being collected, used, or shared, regardless of the entity doing the collecting or using or sharing?
Senator, this is an important question. I would differentiate between ISPs, which I consider to be the pipes of the internet, and the platforms like Facebook or Google or Twitter, YouTube, that are the apps or platforms on top of that. I think in general, the expectations that people have of the pipes are somewhat different from the platforms. So there might be areas where there needs to be more regulation in one and less in the other, but I think that there are going to be other places where there needs to be more regulation of the other type. Specifically, though, on the pipes, one of the important issues that I think we face and have debated is
when you say pipes, you mean
ISPs.
the ISPs.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I want to say is that earlier when that female the congresswoman was asking Zuckerberg, did you send Facebook executives to meet with the Trump campaign during the 2016 election in order to help the Trump campaign understand how to run ads effectively on Facebook? And from what I read, from what I researched, they sent Facebook executives not only to the Trump campaign, but also to Hillary Clinton's campaign. But guess what? The Trump campaign welcomed the Facebook executives into their offices with open arms, saying, yes, teach us how to market on Facebook. But what did the Hillary Clinton campaign do when Facebook sent their executives to their offices to help them understand how to promote on Facebook? Hillary Clinton's campaign people said, no, we don't want you here. Thanks, but no thanks. We're too busy spending billions of dollars on TV ads. Archaic, ineffective TV ads. There's your Russian collusion. Okay, there's your hacking the election. Hillary Clinton was an incompetent old corpse.
Where it has both your texts and your Facebook messages in one place. We also allow people the option of
You can opt in or out of that.
Yes,
Is
it is
easy
opt
to
in.
opt out?
It is opt in. You have to affirmatively say that you want to sync that information before we get access to it.
Unless you opt in, you don't collect that call and text history.
That is correct.
And is that true for is this practice done at all with minors, or do you make an exception there for persons aged 13 to 17?
I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that. Let's do that. One other thing. There have been reports that Facebook can track a user's internet browsing activity even after that user has logged off of the Facebook platform. Can you confirm whether or not this is true?
Senator, I want to make sure I get this accurate, so it would probably be better to have my team follow up.
So you don't know?
afterwards. I know that the people use cookies on the internet, and that you can probably correlate activity between sessions. We do that for a number of reasons, including security and including measuring ads to make sure that the ad experiences are the most effective, which of course people can opt out of. But I want to make sure that I'm precise in my answer, so
when you
let
get,
me
when
follow
you
up
get
with you
back to me,
after.
sir, would you also let us know how Facebook discloses to its users that engaging in this type of tracking gives us that result?
Yes.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Senator Leahy's up next.
Thank you. Mr. Zuckerberg, I assume Facebook's been served with subpoenas from the special counsel Mueller's office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you or anyone at Facebook been interviewed by the special counsel's office?
Yes.
Have you been interviewed?
I have not. I have not.
Others have.
I believe so, and I want to be careful here because that our work with the special counsel is confidential, and I want to make sure that in an open session I'm not revealing something that's confidential.
I understand. That's why I made clear that you have been contacted, you have had subpoenas.
Actually, let me clarify that. I actually am not aware of a subpoena. I believe that there may be, but I know we're working with them.
Thank you. 6 months ago, your general counsel promised us that you were taking steps to prevent Facebook from serving what I would call an unwitting co-conspirator in Russian interference. But these unverified divisive pages are on Facebook today. They look a lot like the anonymous groups of Russian agents used to spread propaganda during the 2016 election. Are you able to confirm whether they're Russian-created groups? Yes or no?
Senator, are you asking about those specifically?
Yes.
Senator, last week we actually announced a major change to our ads and pages policies that we will be verifying the identity of every single
Ask
advertiser.
about the specific ones. Do you know whether they are?
I am not familiar with those pieces of content specifically.
But if you started this policy of a week ago, you'd be able to verify them?
We are working on that now. What we're doing is we're going to verify the identity of any advertiser who's running a political or issue-related ad. This is basically what the Honest Ads Act is proposing, and we're following that. And we're also going to do that for pages.
But you can't answer on these.
I'm not familiar with those specific cases.
Will you find out the answer and get back to me?
I'll have my team get back to you. I do think it's worth adding, though, that we're going to do the same verification of the identity and location of admins who are running large pages. So that way, even if they aren't going to be buying ads in our system, that will make it significantly harder for Russian interference efforts or other inauthentic efforts to try to spread misinformation through the network.
Insofar as it's been going on for some time, some might say that's about time. 6 months ago, I asked your general counsel about Facebook's role as a breeding ground for hate speech against Rohingya refugees. Recently, UN investigators blamed Facebook for playing a role in inciting possible genocide in Myanmar, and there has been genocide there. Now, you say you used AI to find this. This is the type of content I'm referring to. It calls for the death of a Muslim journalist. Now, that threat went straight through your detection systems. It spread very quickly. And then it took attempt after attempt after attempt and the involvement of civil society groups to get you to remove it. Why couldn't it be removed within 24 hours?
Senator, what's happening in Myanmar is a terrible tragedy, and we need to do more.
We all agree with that.
Okay.
But UN investigators have blamed, you blame Facebook for playing a role in the genocide. We all agree it's terrible. How can you dedicate, and will you dedicate, the resources to make sure such hate speech is taken down within 24 hours?
Yes, we're working on this. And there are 3 specific things that we're doing. One is we're hiring dozens of more Burmese language content reviewers, because hate speech is very language specific. It's hard to do it without people who speak the local language, and we need to ramp up our effort there dramatically. Second is we're working with civil society in Myanmar to identify specific hate figures so we can take down their accounts rather than specific pieces of content. And third is we're standing up a product team to do specific product changes in Myanmar and other countries that may have similar issues in the future to prevent this from happening.
When Senator Cruz and I sent a letter to Apple.
Here it is, guys. Facebook bans Rohingya groups post as minority faces, quote, ethnic cleansing. So again, white liberal concerns about hate speech and all this racism and all this fake crap liberals love to pretend to care about. It backfires all the time. And in this case, in Myanmar, there was apparently a brutal dictatorship killing people, and apparently Facebook's algorithm or somebody manually changed it. Apparently they censored a group. It designated a Facebook group as a, quote, dangerous organizations, and ordered moderators to delete any content that was created by them or praising them. The decision ultimately led to a lot of carnage, and it just goes to show that when you try to censor things, okay, because hate speech shouldn't be allowed to spread, in this case it backfired because you ended up silencing minority groups. And I don't mean minority as in like, oh, you know, Muslim group in a majority white country. I mean a small uprising being oppressed by a brutal dictatorship. The small uprising was censored and stifled because Facebook is worried about hate speech. Another argument for why you should allow information to be free and open. What's the worst that's going to happen if a few KKK members have a Facebook group using the N-word? If anything, you're at least going to know that there's a few KKK members angrily using the N-word, right? But what's the worst that could happen when you're micromanaging and macro censoring? And according to, Mark Zuckerberg, he wants to start, quote, policing the ecosystem, implementing AI tools that analyze words and can determine whether or not you're about to post hate speech before you even press the damn publish button. The worst that can happen there is that you're silencing people, which, by the way, is the opposite of Mark Zuckerberg's supposed mission statement to, quote, make the world more open and connected. Okay? But no, because white liberal supremacy reigns supreme, we're going to shut voices down instead of allow voices to propagate and to spread.
Asking what they're going to do about Chinese censorship. My question, I'll place
That'd be great. Thank you, Senator Lake.
for the record. I want to know what you will do about Chinese censorship when they come to you.
Senator Graham's up next.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Andrew Bosworth?
Yes, Senator, I am.
He said, so we connect more people, maybe someone dies in a terrorist attack, coordinated on our tools. The ugly truth is that we believe in connecting people so deeply that anything that allows us to connect more people more often is de facto good. Do you agree with that?
No, Senator, I do not. And as context, Boz wrote that. Boz is what we call him internally. He wrote that as an internal note. We have a lot of discussion internally. I disagreed with it at the time that he wrote it. If you looked at the comments on the internal discussion, the
Would
vast
you
majority
say
of people internally did too.
that you did a poor job as a CEO communicating your displeasure with such thoughts? Because if he had understood where you were at, he would never said it to begin with.
Well, Senator, we try to run our company in a way where people can express different opinions internally.
Well, this
We run Facebook so people could have opinions. We allow you to express yourself because we're so liberal. But if you use our platform and you're a conservative or you're not a complete crazy liberal, we censor you and we shut you down.
is an opinion that really disturbs me. And if somebody worked for me that said this, I'd fire him. Who's your biggest competitor?
Senator, we have a lot of competitors.
Who's your biggest?
I think the categories of, do you want just one? I'm not sure I can give one, but can I give a bunch? Mm-hmm. So there are three categories that I would focus on. One are the other tech platforms, so Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft. We overlap with them in different ways.
Do they provide the same service you provide?
In different ways, different parts of it,
Let me put it
yes.
this way. If I buy a Ford and it doesn't work well and I don't like it, I can buy a Chevy. If I'm upset with Facebook, what's the equivalent product that I can go sign up for?
Well, there's the second category that I was going to talk about.
I'm not talking about categories. I'm talking about, is there real competition you face? Because car companies face a lot of competition. If they make a defective car, it gets out in the world, people stop buying that car, they buy another one. Is it an alternative to Facebook in the private sector?
Yes, Senator. The average American uses 8 different apps to communicate with their friends and stay in touch with people, ranging from texting apps to email.
Which is the same service you provide.
Well, we provide a number of different services.
Is Twitter the same as what you do?
It overlaps with a portion of what we do.
You don't think you have a monopoly?
It certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Okay. So it doesn't. So Instagram, you bought Instagram. How did you buy Instagram?
Because they were very talented app developers who were making good use of our platform and understood our values.
You are a monopoly. Just people are sick and tired. Your customers are sick and tired of being manipulated and turned into damn zombies. You basically do have a monopoly. I mean, not completely, but you're powerful.
It's a good business decision. My point is that one way to regulate a company is through competition, through government regulation. Here's the question that all of us got to answer. What do we tell our constituents, given what's happened here, why we should let you self-regulate? What would you tell people in South Carolina that, given all the things we've just discovered here, it's a good idea for us to rely upon you to regulate your own business practices?
Well, Senator, my position is not that there should be no regulation. Okay. I think the internet is increasingly
important. Do you embrace
important.
Regulation?
I think the real question, as the internet becomes more important in people's lives, is what is the right regulation, not whether there should be or not.
But you as a company welcome regulation?
I think if it's the right regulation, then yes.
You think the Europeans have it right?
I think that they get things right.
Have you ever submitted? That's true. So would you work with us in terms of what regulations you think are necessary?
I think that they get things right.
Have you ever submitted? That's true. So would you work with us in terms of what regulations you think are necessary in your industry?
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you submit to us some proposed regulations?
Yes, and I'll have my team follow up with you so that way we can have this discussion across the different categories where I think that this discussion needs to happen.
Look forward to it. When you sign up for Facebook, you sign up for terms of service. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. It says, the terms govern your use of Facebook and the products, features, apps, services, technologies, software we offer, Facebook's products or products, except where we expressly state that separate terms and not these apply. I'm a lawyer, I have no idea what that means. But when you look at terms of service, this is what you get. Do you think the average consumer understands what they're signing up for?
I don't think that the average person likely reads that whole document.
Yeah.
But I think that there are different ways that we can communicate that and have a responsibility to do so.
Do you agree with me that you better come up with different ways because this ain't working?
Well, Senator, I think in certain areas that is true, and I think in other areas, like the core part of what we do, right? If you think about just at the most basic level, people come to Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger about 100 billion times a day to share a piece of content or a message with a specific set of people. And I think that that basic functionality, people understand because we have the controls in line every time, and given the volume of the activity and the value that people tell us that they're getting from that, I think that that control in line does seem to be working fairly well. Now, we can always do better, and there are the services are complex, and there is more to it than just, you go and you post a photo. So I agree that in many places we could do better. But I think for the core of the service, it actually is quite clear.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, I think we all agree that what happened here was bad. You acknowledged it was a breach of trust. And the way I explain it to my constituents is that if someone breaks into my apartment with a crowbar and they take my stuff, it is just like if the manager gave them the keys or if they didn't have any locks on the doors. It's still a breach. It's still a break-in. And I believe we need to have laws and rules that are sophisticated as the brilliant products that you've developed here. And we just haven't done that yet. And one of the areas that I've focused on is the election. And I appreciate the support that you and Facebook, and now Twitter actually, have given to the Honest Ads Act, a bill that you mentioned that I'm leading with Senator McCain and Senator Warner. And I just want to be clear, as we work to pass this law so that we have the same rules in place to disclose political ads and issue ads as we do for TV and radio, as well as disclaimers, that you're going to take early action as soon as June, I heard, before this election, so that people can view these ads, including issue ads. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator, and I just want to take a moment before I go into this in more detail to thank you for your leadership on this. This, I think, is an important area for the whole industry to move on. The two specific things that we're doing are, one is around transparency. So now you're going to be able to go and click on any advertiser or any page on Facebook and see all of the ads that they're running. So that actually brings advertising online on Facebook to an even higher standard than what you would have on TV or print media.
We're going to skip forward a little bit.
There's nowhere where you can see all of the TV ads that someone is running, for example, whereas you will be able to see now on Facebook whether this campaign or third party is saying different messages to different types of people. I think that that's a really important element of transparency. Mm-hmm. Then the other really important piece is around verifying every single advertiser who's going to be running political or issue ads.
I appreciate that, and Senator Warner and I have also called on Google and the other platforms to do the same, so memo to the rest of you. We have to get this done or we're going to have a patchwork of ads, and I hope that you'll be working with us to pass this bill. Is that right?
We will.
Okay, thank you. Now on the subject of Cambridge Analytica, were these people, the 87 million people, users, concentrated in certain states? Are you able to figure out where they're from?
Sorry, are you asking if Cambridge
Analytica improperly obtained from Facebook users could be stored in Russia? Do you agree that that's a possibility?
Sorry, are you asking if Cambridge Analytica's data could be stored in Russia?
That's what he said this weekend on a Sunday show.
Senator, I don't have any specific knowledge that would suggest that, but one of the steps that we need to take now is
Mark Zuckerberg looked totally just like, he's just like, that is the stupidest question. Cambridge Analytica's data was stored in the Kremlin right next to Putin's laptop. Like, Mark Zuckerberg, as a tech guy, what he must really think about all this Russian hacking shit, I don't even want to know what he really thinks. But obviously what he really thinks is that it's completely freaking retarded. And he was just looking at it like, what? The hacking and then the Russia? Oh my God, bro.
Is go do a full audit of all of Cambridge Analytica's systems to understand what they're doing, whether they still have any data, to make sure that they remove all the data. If they don't, we're going to take legal action against them to do so. That audit, we have temporarily ceded that in order to let the UK government complete their government investigation first, because of course a government investigation takes precedence over a company doing that. But we are committed to completing this full audit and getting to the bottom of what's going on here, so that way we can have more answers to this.
Okay, you earlier stated publicly and here that you would support some privacy rules so that everyone's playing by the same rules here. And you also said here that you should have notified customers earlier. Would you support a rule that would require you to notify your users of a breach within 72 hours?
Senator, that makes sense to me, and I think we should have our team follow up with yours to discuss the details around that more.
Thank you. I just think part of this was when people don't even know that their data's been breached, that's a huge problem, and I also think we get to solutions faster when we get that information out there. Thank you, and we look forward to passing this bill. We'd love to pass it before the election on the honest ads, and looking forward to better disclosure this election. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Blunt's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, nice to see you. When I saw you not too long after I entered the Senate in 2011, I told you when I sent my business cards down to be printed, they came back from the Senate print shop with the message that was the first business card they'd ever printed a Facebook address on. There are days when I've regretted that, but more days when we get lots of information that we need to get. There are days when I wonder if the Facebook friends is a little misstated. That doesn't seem like I have those every single day. But, you know, the platform you've created is really important. Now, my son Charlie, who's 13, is dedicated to Instagram, so he'd want to be sure I mentioned him while I was here with you. I haven't printed that on my card yet. I will say that, but I think we have that account as well. Lots of ways to connect people. And the information, obviously, is an important commodity, and it's what makes your business work. I get that. However, I wonder about some of the collection efforts, and maybe we can go through largely just even yes and no, and then we'll get back to more expansive discussion of this. But do you collect user data through cross-device tracking?
Senator, I believe we do link people's accounts between devices in order to make sure that their Facebook and Instagram and their other experiences can be synced between their devices.
And that would also include offline data that's tracking that's not necessarily linked to Facebook, but linked to some device they went through Facebook on. Is that right?
Senator, I want to make sure we get this right, so I want to have my team follow up with you on that afterwards.
That doesn't seem that complicated to me. Now, you understand this better than I do, but maybe you can explain to me why that's complicated. Do you track devices that an individual who uses Facebook has that is connected to the device that they use for their Facebook connection, but not necessarily connected to Facebook?
I'm not sure the answer to that question.
Really?
Yes. There may be some data that is necessary to provide the service that we do, but I don't have that on sitting here today, so that's something that I would want to follow up.
Now, the FTC last year flagged cross-device tracking as one of their concerns. Generally, that people are tracking devices that the users of something like Facebook don't know that are being tracked. How do you disclose your collection methods? Is that all in this document that I would see and agree to before I entered into a Facebook?
Yes, Senator. So there are two ways that we do this. One is we try to be exhaustive in the legal documents around the terms of service and privacy policies. But more importantly, we try to provide inline controls so that people that are in plain English that people can understand. They can either go to settings or we can show them at the top of the app periodically, so that people understand all the controls and settings they have and can configure their experience the way that
This is insanely boring. Let's fast forward.
want.
So do people
That you're using that Facebook needs to.
So do You don't have bundled permissions for how I can agree to what devices I may use that you may have contact with? Do you bundle that permission, or am I able to one it individually say what I'm willing for you to watch and what I don't want you to watch? And I think we may have to take that for the record based on everybody else's time.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Next up, Senator Durbin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
No.
If you've messaged anybody this week, would you share with us the names of the people you've messaged?
Senator, no, I would probably not choose to do that publicly here.
I think that may be what this is all about. Your right to privacy, the limits of your right to privacy, and how much you give away in modern America in the name of, quote, connecting people around the world. Question basically of what information Facebook's collecting, who they're sending it to, and whether they ever asked me in advance my permission to do that. Is that a fair thing for a user of Facebook to expect?
Yes, Senator. I think everyone should have control over how their information is used. And
At this point, in the past, that sometimes that information is going way beyond their friends, and sometimes people have made money off of sharing that information. To send video and text messages to children's online.
so we built this service to do that. The app collects a minimum amount of information that is necessary to operate the
Which is to regulate the commercial use of facial, voice, finger, and iris scans and the like. We're now in a fulsome debate on that, and I'm afraid Facebook has come down to the position trying to carve out exceptions to that. I hope you'll fill me in on how that is consistent with protecting privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Senator Cornyn.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here. I know up until 2014, the mantra or motto of Facebook was move fast and break things. Is that correct?
I don't know when we changed it, but the mantra is currently move fast with stable infrastructure, which is a much less sexy mantra.
Sounds much more boring, but my question is, during the time that it was Facebook's mantra or motto to move fast and break things, do you think some of the misjudgments, perhaps mistakes that you've admitted to here were as a result of that culture or that attitude, particularly as regards to personal privacy of the information of your subscribers?
Senator, I do think that we made mistakes because of that, but the broadest mistakes that we made here are not taking a broad enough view of our responsibility. And that wasn't a matter, the move fast cultural value is more tactical around whether engineers can ship things and different ways that we operate. But I think the big mistake that we've made looking back on this is viewing our responsibility as just building tools rather than viewing our whole responsibility as making sure that those tools are used for good.
Well, and I appreciate that, because previously or early in the past, we've been told that platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the like are neutral platforms, and the people who own and run those for profit, and I'm not criticizing doing something for profit in this country, but they bore no responsibility for the content. You agree now that Facebook and other social media platforms are not neutral platforms, but bear some responsibility for the content.
I agree that we're responsible for the content. And I think that there's one of the big societal questions that I think we're going to need to answer is the current framework that we have is based on this reactive model that assumed that there weren't AI tools that could proactively tell whether something was terrorist content or something bad. So it naturally relied on requiring people to flag for a company and then the company needing to take reasonable action. In the future, we're going to have tools that are going to be able to identify more types of bad content And I think that there are moral and legal obligation questions that I think we'll have to wrestle with as a society about when we want to
To crack down hate speech.
require companies to take action proactively on certain of those things, that gets in the way of...
I appreciate that. I have 2 minutes left
All right.
to ask you questions. So you interestingly, the terms of,
do.
how about third parties that you have contracted with to use some of
Cambridge Analytica, correct?
Yes.
I want to show you the terms of service that Alexander Kogan provided to Facebook. And note for you that, in fact, Facebook was on notice that he could sell that user information. Have you seen these terms of service before?
I have not.
Who in Facebook was responsible for seeing those terms of service that put you on notice that that information could be sold?
Senator, our app review team would be responsible for that.
Has anyone been fired on that app review team?
Senator, not because of this.
Doesn't that term of service conflict with the FTC order that Facebook was under at that very time that this term of service was, in fact, provided to Facebook? And you'll note that the FTC orders
is not that this was a violation of the consent decree, but as I've said a number of times today, I think we need to take a broader view of our responsibility around privacy than just what is mandated in the current laws.
Well, here is my reservation, Mr. Zuckerberg, and I apologize for interrupting you, but my time is limited. We've seen the apology tours before. You have refused to acknowledge even an ethical obligation to have reported this violation of the FTC consent decree. And we have letters, we've had contacts with Facebook employees, and I'm going to submit a letter for the record from Sandy Parakilis, with your permission, that indicates not only a lack of resources, but lack of attention to privacy. And so my reservation about your testimony today is that I don't see how you can change your business model unless there are specific rules of the road. Your business model is to monetize user information, to maximize profit over privacy. And unless there are specific rules and requirements enforced by an outside agency, I have no assurance that these kinds of vague commitments are going to produce action. So I want to ask you a couple of very specific questions, and they are based on legislation that I've offered, the My Data Act, legislation that Senator Markey is introducing today, the Consent Act, which I'm joining. Don't you agree that companies ought to be required to provide users with clear, plain information about how their data will be used and specific ability to consent to the use of that information?
God, Jesus.
Senator, I do generally agree with what you're saying, and I laid that out earlier when I talked about what...
Would you agree to an opt-in as opposed to an opt-out?
Senator, I think that certainly makes sense to discuss, and I think the details around this matter a lot.
Would you agree that users should be able to access all of their information?
Senator, yes, of course.
All of the information that you collect as a result of purchases from data brokers, as well as tracking them?
Senator, we have already a download your information tool that allows people to see and to take out all of the
Anyways,
information.
this shit is absurdly boring at this point. We need actual people there asking actual questions. Some people have grilled him decently, but a lot of it just goes right over the head of this actual topic and the actual questions that need to be asked. Somebody needs to ask Mark Zuckerberg why, according to Diamond and Silk, two female black women who support Trump on Facebook, somebody need to ask Mark Zuckerberg why, according to those two black women, a Facebook representative told them that the reason Facebook was censoring their Facebook page was because these two black women were, quote, unsafe to the community. Apparently, a Facebook representative thinks that two black women are unsafe to the community. So this is the kind of white liberal racism oozing out. You want to talk about hate speech? Let's talk about the hate speech of, according to Diamond and Silk, a Facebook representative calling them unsafe to the community. Maybe we should go around censoring that on Facebook. But again, this whole thing has been one giant exercise in white liberal supremacy. Let me just, well, I'm sure the live stream health is fine. Look, this is the circus that we're dealing with here today. Mark Zuckerberg is probably going to scurry away scot-free. You guys can expect in the next coming years, as Zuckerberg himself has announced, Orwellian tools to, quote, police the ecosystem on Facebook, to crack down, pre-crime Minority Report level censorship AI tools, which is what Zuckerberg mentioned. AI tools that will know if what you're posting to Facebook is hate speech even before you even press the post publish button. So they are trying to prevent this, okay? The only reason Mark Zuckerberg is testifying before Congress is because the left can't accept defeat. You lost. Hillary Clinton was an irrelevant old corpse who did not know how to run a social media campaign. When Barack Obama did it, okay, he was hailed as an innovator, a cutting-edge innovator who was hip and in the know, all right? When Donald Trump does it, he's a colluder and he used people's information and he manipulated people into voting for him. It's funny how that double standard works, right? So they're trying to prevent this. That's what this whole hearing is about. They're trying to prevent Trump 2020. They're trying to make sure that finally someone with balls does not get elected because the establishment left does not want the voices of everyday people being heard. They want to crush those voices, which is what Mark Zuckerberg's new AI pre-crime tools are designed to scope out and censor. This is the new age of digital censorship, digital tyranny, where AI robots, like in the Matrix, are going through the fucking tunnels, the digital tunnels, looking for anybody who rebels against the system to freaking capture them and destroy them and bring them back to the plantation. So Mark Zuckerberg could have just come out when the liberals started focusing their gaze on him, saying Facebook's the reason Trump won because there's no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, so now it's Facebook's fault and Cambridge Analytica. They got to keep finding shit. Mark Zuckerberg could have just said, listen, liberals, we lost. We failed. We fucked up. Okay? And he could have just told liberals, look, I didn't do anything wrong. Trump, his Facebook social media team pioneered Facebook and absolutely dominated on Facebook with the marketing during the 2016 election. Mark will never do that because that would be the ultimate nail in the coffin for the left. So instead of being honest and telling what he really thinks, he's going to come out here and pretend like his own company is somehow complicit and help, Donald Trump get elected. So again, guys, Trump 2020, finally someone with balls. This right here is the reason Mark Zuckerberg is shitting his pants right now. This right here is the reason they're freaking out. Isn't that funny? Just a message, just an idea. Donald Trump repeatedly has described himself, he's just a messenger. And indeed, that's all he is. He's just a messenger. He's not our dictator. He's not our dear leader. He's just a messenger of the people. And that's why they're terrified. Because they can't have finally someone with balls in there. They need a fake empty suit, cookie cutter kind of guy, like a Mark Zuckerberg kind of guy, who will sell his soul, or like a Tony Robbins who recently apologized to feminists for having his own opinion. You need cookie cutter, empty suit type people who will kowtow and just compromise on all their values, everything they believe in, because it gives them short-term expediency. So this is the age. This is the finally someone with balls age, and they're terrified of it. Thank you guys for tuning in. Trump 2020 t-shirts, get them now because it triggers them. It pisses them off. They don't know what to do. And you think Donald Trump's not going to get reelected in 2020? Especially if he gets freaking Kim Jong-un to denuclearize, it's set in stone. But they're scared. Finally, someone with balls. The antidote to the censorship paradigm, the new censorship pyramid paradigm. Trump 2020 t-shirts. The link is right there in the description. Click it. Get yourself one. Thank you guys for watching. Oh man, they are freaking out. They are panicking. Look at them. They're like, what? This guy was not supposed to win. What happened? Get yourselves a shirt, guys. Rub it in their face because they're scared. Thank you guys for watching. I'm hungry. I think I'm going to go eat something now. I don't know. Let's see.